What's up, strength coaches? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we are making strength and conditioning not boring anymore. And we do this by highlighting the practitioners in the show. And today we have yet another one of the NSCA Strength Coach of the Year winners, Coach Kenna Smoak. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. Did I get that right?
Yes, Smoak Medici.
Okay, Smoak Minichi. I apologize. I'm not very good at pronouncing
All
English.
good.
Ask my wife. Like, I have it's bad. It's bad. But that's a butchered intro. Coach, why don't you introduce yourself for anybody that is unaware of who you are?
All right. Well, I'm Kenna Smoak Medici. I am going on my 7th year at Army West Point, and let's see, I have baseball, volleyball, and wrestling. But my time here, I've pretty much covered or worked majority of the Olympic sports. Baseball, I've had my whole time, and other than that, just kind of filling in and growing in my career, covering all of our sports. And prior to that, I had coaching stops at Marshall, SMU, UTC Chattanooga.
Wow.
I got my grad school done at Gardner-Webb University, internships at Georgia Tech, and then University of Alabama was where I did my undergrad internship.
Yo, everybody rewind that like 30 seconds and hear, I mean, she's been around. Like, there's going to be a wealth of knowledge right here.
Yeah. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. And let's see, growing up, I got into a weight room around 11 years old,
Really?
Little untraditional route. I played football in high school. So my dad only let that happen if I could survive his workouts. Because he, being a female, he was like, oh, well, fine. You want to do that? You're going to do it my way. Little did he know, I fell in love with it. And it really changed the whole trajectory of my life. Then as senior year of high school, another big event, I had my first back surgery. And then, so my athletic career kind of shifted and changed, and that ended football. And I really just kind of got into the training side of things and rehabbing and everything. I'd already been in the weight room. So it was kind of an easy transition to, I guess, come back, do some higher reps, running, because I couldn't train like a football player anymore. That led to bodybuilding. So I did that into my senior year of high school, and that continued on through grad school while I was interning and and becoming a coach as well. And then I pivoted again, had another back surgery, thought would be harder to come back from, powerlifting. So I did that a few years. And then, most recently, my athletic career, I ran a couple marathons, but just kind of for fun to give me something.
A couple marathons. Like, she just wasn't in there so casual.
Well, I had a baby a year and a half ago, and then it was just easier to run because I didn't need a whole gym set up when he napped. So I kind of pivoted in that, but that was a long way to answer my athletic background and kind of how it led into coaching.
So I want to start with the back surgery stuff because a lot of our coaches might be listening. Like, they've had athletes that either have it or they have some sort of injury and they have to make modifications. What are your modifications that you used for yourself and then that you recommend for everybody else?
So my surgeries happened. One was in high school, and this was, 2007, 2008. So where we are in strength and conditioning, rehab, and everything is so much further ahead now. I really don't think you should get cut open as a first choice. And then the second one was kind of cleaning up what happened from the first one 10 years later of pounding my body, being obsessed with the weight room. So I really don't want athletes to get to that point. But in rehabbing, really both women, really that second one, because I was older and able to put a lot more of that on my plate and in my hands. Dr. Stuart McGill is just buy all his books, read all his books, and apply them correctly. That's the main thing. With so many of these rehab exercises, people aren't breathing and bracing and doing the little things right, where they're just pounding out reps, and that's not necessarily what you need to get the job done.
Okay. So when you say implement it correctly and breathing and bracing, first question is, what do you mean by implement it correctly? Second question, how do you get a group of athletes to breathe and brace correctly in a large group setting? Because I know I've struggled with it. You can get it for our listeners too. What's your recommendation then?
Early off season, just start at square. I actually did this
that's a good
with
point.
volleyball girls today. They're on the court, so it was really easy to just get them down on the ground prior to our dynamic warm up. And I was like, okay, I know we do these in the weight room year round, but we're going to start from square one, and we're just going to work on pelvic tilts and overemphasize the in range of each of those movements when you're tilting your pelvis. And then we did some bird dogs, and I'm really big on okay, make sure that you're exhaling on the effort, like EE. Everyone can remember that. And really it should kind of happen a little bit sooner, but while you're learning, if it's not quite simultaneous yet and you have to force to exhale on the effort, I think eventually it'll become a pattern to where it will be a little more streamlined. So that's kind of how I started early off season. And then we led from that into more of our linear speed work. Okay, guys, get up. Let's do a dynamic warm up. I'm then going to go into an A series. And what do you know? Our hips, our pelvis, spine have to all be neutral. Like that, that's a really big part of your posture and everything. And it's just we just did this on the ground. You should be able to do it standing up. And that's kind of how I will address it in the next few weeks. You're always going to have some of those athletes that will revert back to bad patterns. But just as far as in a team setting, I feel if I could get, 70% of them, then I did my job. And then that other 30% can get a little extra attention.
How about in the weight room in terms of patterning and training, whether it be, like you said, anterior, posterior tilts? What about hip IR, ER, biasing it, whether you're on your back or seated? What are some of key components or exercises that you've used?
So, this is going to vary a little bit sport to sport. I've worked a lot of baseball, and that being rotational.
Yeah, IR is huge, right? I'm sure
it definitely is. But when I look at the course of the year, I really try to take my early off season period and start with a lot of our accessory movements. You're going to be on the ground, and then you're going to go to a split kneeling. And then if you earn the right, you can be split kneeling elevated to where
you're truly following McGill right to the T then.
Yeah, and a lot of Cressy, I'm not gonna lie.
Cressy,
so a hybrid of it. Okay, now
good for you.
Now how do we start rotating? And then the upper body and all that gets thrown into it too. And then from there progress. Okay, now we're going to be standing athletic stance, add a little bit of a rotational component to it, anti-rotation. And then as those months go on, or training blocks, if you will, maybe not a full month, depending how you break it down or how they're progressing, then we should be able to rotate, throw our med balls explosively, jump, all the things, and decelerate our body, and then produce force for the next rep with the proper bracing and the technique, internal and external rotation. That's my thought process. And then as they get into season, I kind of take it a step back to where then we revert back down the progressions to where when my team is in the playoffs, okay, we might be down to split kneeling palif press, or if you will, because you're getting those high impact movements day in, day out at practice and all the repetition, or all the games, and withstanding your whole season.
How about loaded carries? Do they play a big part in, what you're doing for either back surgery for yourself or within the torso training?
Yes, they do. In my setting, we have 21 sports on the Olympic side, I believe, for Army West Point. So a lot of it is logistics. I'm not going to lie. It's okay, who am I sharing the weight room with? Weather being another one. Can I take them outside and let's do trap bar walks in, the field right by, or do we need to stay inside today? Then am I limited on space? They definitely do play a part in it.
Yeah, and one of the things, coaches, you need to hear that's been something that we've preached forever, is your programming dictates on the room you have and the athletes you have. You cannot be talk about then those challenges for what you have sharing the weight room.
I think it just comes down to everyone, we have to be very cohesive as a staff. If I'm sharing the room, I need to know what, say, the tennis team is doing that's going to come in my back half of my lift if I need to switch some of the order of what I'm doing, or where I need to corral my team, if you will. And I'm really big, my teams know, you respect all the teams. You need to stay in your space, or we can go somewhere else and do something not fun. I'm very every team deserves to be in here, respect their space. They're coming in the back half, 15 minutes. You're going to exit out this door. We're very, structured. And I like to look ahead on the calendar to kind of get rid of some of that noise to where people lose training time.
And now, is that one of the complications of, being in the academy setting where everybody shares it and you guys have very specific time to work with your
Yes.
athletes?
Yes, like that is a big factor into it, because we do have like a ton of space, super big facilities, but it doesn't, we have 1,100 student athletes.
What?
And yeah, when
Say that again?
we have 1,100 student athletes. Yeah, out of 4,400 total cadets. So roughly 25% of the student population is an athlete for an NCAA team. So
wow.
and then also when they're in class, there's no like, oh, I have an hour off, or I can go to the academic advisor here and say, oh no, my team wants to train at this site. Like there's none of that. They're in military requirements and they're in highly academic classes and course load. So there's no like, we don't really have many teams between like that 9 to 2:30 range. And then it's just chaos.
Yeah.
And we're staggered, with our schedule, 15, 20-minute blocks. Your sport coaches want you 3 places at the same time. So you have to be very organized.
Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about our membership site. If you find value from our podcast, you are guaranteed to find more value inside of the Strength Coach Network video library inside the membership. Doesn't matter the level coach you are, you can see all of our 170 plus lectures sorted 3 different ways. Based on the level of expertise coach you are, aspiring, established, or head, you can sort it by every sport imaginable, and you can sort it by every topic in strength and conditioning. This makes all of the content consumable, easy for you and for your staff members to be able to deep dive on any topic in strength and conditioning. Click the link down below to try the site out for 24 hours for only $1. Then your membership turns into a monthly membership where the price is less than $30 a month for $29.99, which is less than going out to dinner by yourself. You have access to all of this content. Click the link down below. So how do you do that for any of our, because that might be ringing true with anybody else working at an academy setting. And again, respecting the privacy of where you work, just from a 10,000 foot view, what do you recommend to any of our listeners out there on how to balance all of that? The demands of condensed time, density, and you got to be all over the place because you only have at least one weight room, right? Not like 3 or 4.
We have 3. Yeah, we have 3 weight rooms. And I mean, if you've ever been in the Hudson Valley, like there's, we have mountains and a river. And so like sometimes getting from one location to the other on post is a little, not quite convenient. But as far as like balancing like multiple sports, you have to kind of, I hate to say prioritize, but like when someone's in their championship season, like that kind of has to be like your first priority in the scheduling. But then there's also like the safety component is, do I need to miss a lift for a team in their off season that might be doing something heavier to go and warm up another team? Yeah. Or can I delegate the responsibility to warm up because I am the certified coach with the most experience? I need to be where the safety is the biggest concern for the room. So I do kind of take that into account. And then, I mean, this sounds bad, but who your sport coaches are really going to dictate the amount of headaches you have.
Big facts.
Try to have
big facts.
Try to have organized sport coaches and build those relationships to where you have time to schedule. And like when those things do pop up with college athletics, like the last minute changes, like you can at least maybe foresee them a little bit, or you at least have an understanding coach that will have your back.
You talked about having a coach that has your back. Has the high performance model where athletic trainer, strength coach, PT, nutritionist, they're all coming together and they're all having these meetings weekly to talk about the team, and then the team behind the team working with the sport coach. Is that how things are going there? Are you in charge of it? How does that look again in whether it's a military sense, or how has that gone for you? And then what do you recommend to anybody listening right now?
Yeah. So as strength and conditioning, I really view myself as like a support staff of that head coach.
And it's not a bad term, right? Like I don't like coaches that think it's a bad term, because we're the support beams of a house, right?
Right.
Like without those, they fall.
Right. You are implementing the culture and the vision of that sport coach in order to win championships and develop leaders of high character and all that, if you will. But like at the end of the day, like you're working for someone and they were hired to make that program successful. So you have to carry out their vision. And then every other pillar needs to as well. And you have your area of expertise. So I'm not going to, my opinion doesn't have more value than the athletic trainers in their area or the nutritionist or the dietitian. It's kind of, we all have our areas, and the sport coach then needs to respect that and let us handle all of our areas. I mean, they can give input and we can go back and forth about anything, but at the end of the day, it's like we're under their hierarchy.
What's been one of the best experiences that you've had? Like, again, 10,000 foot view, but like, what's been one of the best, like, man, this was an awesome experience with like this team and this special season of athletes and team achievement. And it might not even been a successful season, but like the athletes just bought in. Like, what's been one of the best experiences in your life as a coach?
So I've been with Army baseball my whole time here, and we've won 5 Patriot League championships, and we've had 2 different head coaches. And like, you're thinking, oh, well, like I'm going to my 7th year. So what happened the other year? The other year was COVID and we didn't have a season. So essentially, like, we're on this streak right now. And it's been just, it's a testament to like the work ethic of those players and the older players, and how their tradition carries on once those players leave, because we really have done it through 2 different head coach staffs and a lot of different support staffs. I think at this point, I'm the only like consistent person that my seniors have had. So just, I mean, they're so special to me, that relationship I have with that program. That's not saying anything, oh, my others I don't as well, but it's just, I've been with them the longest, and postseason too. So
yeah, no, it is special when you are able to do that and have that kind of continuity, because for myself, I had that where, hey, coaches come and go, but if you can provide that stability, I mean, I remember I went outside with the throwers during a throwing practice because they had 4 coaches across the 6 seasons that I was there with them. But like, I was the most consistent thing. And the acting head coach was like, hey, we're down. Could you just like go outside and like, you know, kind of supervise / be with them? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm not a throwing coach. I'm their coach in the weight room, but I'll be out there with them and be able to provide that kind of stability.
And then, like, you know, on a personal side, like with my life, I've been here 7 years. I was 26, 27 when I took this job. Yep. Now I'm 34. Like, the senior class has seen me get married, have a baby, bring my baby to the playoffs. Like, you know, they've seen me coach with him on my back, like in my hiking backpack, with the last minute schedule change. So they've really like seen like the human side of me too evolve as well. And it's just only built our relationship and the trust that they have in me.
That's a perfect segue to, so anybody listening, she had a fantastic speech that was pre-recorded and then you can find on her social media, but the whole notion of work-life balance, it really struck a chord with me. And that's why, you know, I reached out to her, but I'm not going to keep talking about it because it resonated with me. I'll let you explain it, but this whole notion of work-life balance and how it relates.
Yeah. So I hate the word balance. I just hate it. I grew up a competitor, and really just always competing in everything I did. And when you hear the word balance, it just, I don't know, it just doesn't sit well with me. So I like to think that to have a full life, you have to be kind of out of balance in certain points. And there's a season for each of those areas. And then, I mean, if you want to talk, we do this when we write out programs in training. So if I want to compare balance to a training philosophy, okay, like, why am I a failure if I want my life to be concurrent in seasons? But everyone does it in their training. So like you're, you know, like, I'm not going to train everything equally 25% in all my buckets all year long. No, I'm going to have a season where I need to focus on this a little bit more. This I might just maintain, but my support system, for me, that's my husband and my family and, you know, all Army West Point. They're going to have my back and be like, okay, she's kind of doing this, or, you know, because I've built that rapport and have those relationships to where then like, okay, then it's going to swing a little bit back. And like when it's time to be in season with my team, like, okay, I'm all in on them. My hours might be a little crazier with work, but then it'll work itself out. So, I mean, that's kind of how I view it. And you're never really going to accomplish goals and be fulfilled if you just try to say, here are my 4 areas of my life. They're 25% in all of them all the time. Sometimes you got to be 30, 60, 20. I don't know the math, but you know, you got to be off a little bit and then it'll work itself back out and the season will come back around for you to have that time with your family or time with another sport, or to grind with whatever, or a personal goal, if you will, in competing. So, I mean, that's kind of like my take on it. So I really dismiss that whole word of like work-life balance.
I love that. And I love what you said like that. I mean, you saying the concurrent training like that, strength coaches, how do you not
I'm a
understand what she
meathead. I
just
don't
said
know,
right there?
like,
But like, no, it makes sense.
yeah.
You're vertically integrating your life
Yes.
within, if you do it within training, why would you expect to do anything other than that with your life?
Right. And I mean, it's training. You map it out. All right,
It's genius.
you map out your life. Like, right. It's like, okay, I
Yes.
know this is baseball season. I know I'm going to be busy till June and my hours will be all over the place. But then you know what? I have a little bit of downtime before volleyball, or whatever
But
it may
even
be.
within
And then it's
that,
like,
like you
oh,
have
I
like, you
want
might
my
have a
own training.
Wednesday. You
Right.
might have
Yes.
Wednesday where you have more time with your family, with
Right.
vertically integrated within the
Yes.
week, right? Like,
yeah, you can look big picture, small picture. So I don't know. That's just how my meathead brain, especially when I became a mom, how am I going to stay organized? It's like, oh, well, like this is a season for this and it's going to work itself out. And then I just try to balance everything like that.
but no, again, like anybody listening, like that resonates true with me because I think maybe it is when you become a parent is definitely when it changes. Cause like that for me is what happened when, especially when my first son was born, but when my second son was born, right? Like that really just changed it all. And you do that thing where you're like, okay, how can I periodize it where, they're with you. And you even talked in your video about how your athletes were like watching your kids, dude. Some of my softball girls, like to this day, one of my interns like babysat the boys so Megan and I could either go out for a date night or just to get away for a little bit. Like when you can just truly integrate the two, how amazing it is because your athletes, they see you as a person, right? Like,
yes. And I mean, just back to like find good sport coaches, be it a university that has your back. Like I've traveled with volleyball with like my 1-year-old.
really?
And because we were going to a place where I had family, so it just like I was like, well, we just gotta survive the plane trip, and then I can pass them off and like, do it all. Like,
You're absolutely right.
And I just I have great sport coaches. Had a conversation. And I was like, oh, yeah, why not? Like,
that's unbelievable. Good for you because that makes we talk about the 4 P's here where it's you look at a job, pay, perform, pay, career progression, personal life, sense of greater purpose. And like that definitely helps with the personal life, sense of greater purpose, like feeling like you belong to something. So coaches out there listening, like have those conversations with your coaches, not so you can bring your child on a trip, right?
No,
like that's not
that's
not the thing. It's the fact that you have that good of a relationship with the coaches that you can do those things and you can live a more fulfilled life. Cause chances are you probably coach even harder, for those girls or at that university because they value you as a human being.
Completely. And then it's so good for the athletes to see. My male athletes to see like, their only female coach is still in with them like 100% and can still like be a great mom. And then for my female athletes, just to see me go through the whole process and not let me slow down a bit.
You're setting an example because not only like Kate Correa was one of my first assistants at Towson, and you talking about that right there, it reminds me of what Kate was saying, where her female athletes seeing her lifting heavy and doing these things, like it gives them someone to look up to. So for you, again, to set that example for your female athletes, like, hey, you can still be a mom and you can have a child and you can still train and you can do difficult things and you can live a life and have a career. And then, like you said, the male athletes are like, oh, wow, like this is what a strong female should be like. Like this is, it's unbelievable. Yeah. Like kudos to you for that.
Like on the West Point, in fact, all my like female athletes are going to go in the military. They're going to have a career. And, so like, it's just like another example.
But I mean, shout out to, your husband and the ability to make that work as a family too, right? Like, because that again, but like you want to talk about the periodization or the strength coach
you got
side
to sit down with your spouse.
You got to sit down with your high performance staff, right?
Like when are you peaking? When am I going to peak in this? Because like for me, it can't be hunting season, but for so that's kind of how we have to. Yeah,
Again,
the
but strength
support.
coaches out there that are listening to this, like you got to like, that's how you make it work. And to me, that's part of your flywheel that you've pushed in terms of being able to be successful because you have set up those roadblocks. You've set up
Hmm.
those things in life or checkpoints, right? Where
Yeah.
you have that ability to talk and now you're not preoccupied at work with other thoughts. You're
Hmm.
in the weight room when you're with your athletes. You're training
Oh
them.
yeah.
You're doing all of
Hmm.
those things.
Yeah.
How has that been? So we talked about it in terms of the work-life balance, in terms of,
Hmm.
your personal life with your athletes. How about your coworkers, anybody that you're overseeing? Like, what's been the impact of that? How do you go about leading them within all of it? Quick break from the show to remind you to hit that like and subscribe button so that way you get notifications of when more content like this gets released. So click that like and subscribe button. And with that, let's get back to the show.
Yeah. Back to just like the whole time management. I find like I'm so much more productive at work, and I because like I
Right.
can't dilly dally in the office. It's like, no, I'm sorry. Like, hold your questions. I have to get this done this next 40 minutes. I'm very like, I have to stick to my schedule. And I think they all know that and respect that. And hopefully it rubs off on them a little bit to not just like, I'm guilty of like training way too well. Some days you can if you have that time block, but just letting the time get away from you. Because especially at West Point, we do have a lot of, it's not really downtime because there's a lot to do, but
Yes.
you have to be organized to manage your time or stuff will sneak up on you. So hopefully they will see me be like, oh no, I have 40 minutes to get this done. And then I have a meeting and then this has to get done because I can't pull my laptop out at night. And I can wake up early and pull it out, but my baby might be up.
Yeah.
So it's not a guarantee that I'm going to have it undivided attention. So this is my like office time. So hopefully it rubs off on them a little bit to where they can, start the process of getting organized for that next role that they have, whether it be personally or professionally.
And that resonates true. There was a coach that I'm friends with that worked at a school similar to your setup where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, condensed group of all the athletes come in and train. And then they're in school, right? Like at the Ivy
Mm-hmm.
Leagues, they're in school. And
Yes.
like you said, there's really no, hey, like there's not a lot of class conflicts because they have a very big weight room too. So, I mean, it's a madhouse between
Mm-hmm.
essentially 6 to 10:30 and then
Yep.
10:30 to 2:30 open time, like really
Mm-hmm.
a lot of free time, and then
Mm-hmm.
2:30 to 6:30 it's a madhouse again. So it's like the coaches explained to me when I was there interning,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we're on the floor and we're working really hard during those 4 hours. And then, yeah, maybe like Frage would leave the office so he could like
Mm-hmm.
detach, refresh himself, and then come back and do that work because it's like, hey, heightened awareness of on floor hours in the office hours. And you had to be really, really smart with that time. And so,
Mm-hmm.
anybody listening to that, find ways to prioritize that. So that way your head is where your feet are.
Yes, exactly.
um, so, anybody else listening to this right now, Kenna and I had a mutual contact, Bree, who was a softball coach there for a while and then now has gone into the military. Did you ever have any of that desire? Because when we had her on the show, she just talked about how, leadership and how that was an opportunity to lead more people. Was that something that either A, happens a lot that you've seen at Army West Point? Is that something that ever crossed your mind?
I've seen it happen. For me personally, like I love serving those that serve. I love my passion is strength and conditioning. And when I can share that passion, I then have purpose. And then their purpose can go on and be that leader. So I can be the person behind the scenes that maybe help them influence them a little bit for their career. So that's really like how I found my place here. I have seen a lot of like coaches or just really anyone that steps on foot at West Point then want to join the military or really anything uh, service related. So for me though, I find joy in serving those that serve.
Yeah, that resonates, for me and I think for other coaches too, because you're starting to see more and more coaches going into this H2F route.
Oh yeah.
Have
Mm-hmm.
you seen more coaches in your personal circle that are branching out? And if so, what have they been saying to you? What are the pros and cons in your detached point of view from it?
Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of coworkers or just like people through the field, friends, uh, take that route from college, and it's just like, I mean, it's different. You are gaining like you are training someone for their job that is the military, but you're giving up the whole sports and team dynamic. So
True.
I don't know. I think the main question is like, how much do you love sports? And then kind of work backwards from there.
What's
So
your
that's
piece
been
of
the
it?
main thing I've heard people like say is, oh, I miss the team. I miss the university feel and like everyone in a program together. Because there you have a lot of individuals with like personal goals.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest difference.
Well, then what's your recommendation for anybody that does have, I mean, for having 1,100 athletes across that many, like those
Mm-hmm.
few of sports, for lack of a better term, like how do you manage that large of a roster?
Um, I don't know. I guess I'm like kind of used to it right now because I've been here
You'll
so
be
long.
bored if you go to a regular university ever.
I've really said that so many times because, like, you know, I got here and first of all, I'm from the South, so just location wise alone, being in New York, I never thought like I would be here this long. I thought like I'd, work my way back down to, maybe not Alabama, but like that type of area. Um, and it didn't happen because I just like fell in love with like working with the cadet athletes, and I absolutely love the challenges of dealing with so many of them and the schedule conflicts. And then we haven't even really touched on it, but like their military requirements.
Yeah.
Like if you can get your training to work here, you can get it to work anywhere. It's like really what I tell anyone that comes and joins our staff. Like if you can figure out how to program around survival swim and summer training and like the beast period that they call it in their summer and combatives and all these things that they're doing for the military, you're gonna be fine anywhere else.
That's actually interesting that you say that because I feel like at a lot of schools, or I'd say probably 95%, so outside of yours, athletes are probably going to do extra work on their own, and you're probably trying to navigate that. But you know that your athletes are doing extra work and they
Mm-hmm.
have their requirements for the military, and you almost are tertiary behind military, sport coach, and then you.
Yeah, and then I mean, it is pretty much at Ivy League academic level.
Really?
Yes, it is extremely.
Oh
You
my
get the, I
gosh.
joke with my athletes all the time. Like if I'm doing weight room math real quick, I'm like, what it? Tell me this real quick. I went to Alabama. You're here, like just kind of joking about it because they really are brilliant. Which like you kind of gets lost in the fact that they're also going to serve their country, but you have to
Yeah.
be very smart to go here. So there's that too. So then I don't know if that makes us third, fourth, whatever. But you just I don't know. You have to wear a lot of hats and like learn outside of just strength and conditioning about what really is going on here and talk to them about what their daily stressors are. It's probably gonna be things you never heard of. But yeah, with time you'll learn.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're not able to just make the same basic, like, oh, you need to sleep and have good nutrition. Because it's like, well, if they have something that they literally have to be awake for and they don't have the
Oh
ability to
yeah.
get that sleep or nutrition, because, what does that, again, respecting the privacy of where you work, but
Yeah.
how do you navigate through the sleep and the nutrition part of it in your world as their athletics coach, too?
Um, you just you have to ask the right questions. And I would say this at any university where you are, because they're all set up a little bit differently. You all
Mm.
have a different kind of, type of athlete that's recruited there, whether it be like level or culture or whatever. You need to ask the right questions about, like let's not talk West Point, but just like where does your team go for pregame meals, for postgame meals, or where do they hang out on the weekends? Find that stuff out and then kind of work backwards of like, okay, well, here's some good food choices you could have there. You like this type of food? Okay, well, here's a easier and cheaper way to make it in your dorm room. I think so just not even West Point, it's just getting to know your athletes and asking those questions. And, the time management conversations, it's on a larger scale here, but all 18 to 22-year-olds need to learn that. So.
What's been the best success case that you've had with an athlete that you've needed to connect with to help them with their, whether their strength goals, whatever their individual goals were? What's been one of the most rewarding experiences in your multiple years as a coach?
Well, we have a program here. I won't get into all the acronyms. So basically, for some of the sports where the military requirements of height and weight can be detrimental to like your health, like let's say offensive linemen, heavyweight wrestlers, track throwers, maybe some rugby players, men or women. Like you might want to be a little heavier than what the military recommends. So they're allowed to have their playing career and be able to have different like guidelines for testing. for height and weight while they're playing. But then once that season stops, you have to meet those requirements for graduation. And so if you, think of, everyone knows football, so a lineman, you're right. Then December happens, January, whatever, season over, you have 4.5, 5 months to fit that requirement. And what does that look like? So we do a lot of that overseeing of those athletes to help them learn the patterns, to do it a safe and a healthy way, because they're going to have to keep that weight off. It's not just like, oh, you passed, now you graduated. It's like they're going to have to stay that size their whole career. So that's been, I've had some really rewarding cases working with athletes like that. And sometimes they weren't my athletes leading up to that pivotal point. It might be then they're handed over to me to then figure it out.
That's unbelievable. And you make a great point. And that resonates for me. I mean, I was an offensive lineman, so I finished playing at 300 pounds. And then, by my graduation, I self-imposed like a 250 or 245 pound goal. But I mean, to think that you have to do that for graduation, that rings true for probably a lot of our listeners out there.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. What has been one of the biggest aha moments that you've had in your last, call it 3 to 5 years, in terms of programming that you've done differently and that you've seen some good fruitful returns on?
I'm trying to think. That's a hard one, because I feel like I'm constantly finding new things. Like I don't even want to do stuff from last year, want to, revamp everything. But I think just kind of how we talked about at the beginning, the progression of like how you look at your core and your bracing, and you can really apply that to all the movements, to where I really have backed off on the complexity of my accessory movements in season, because then it is like preseason, we're doing all the fancy landmines, med ball throws, Olympic variations, whatever we think will transfer over to the movement of their sport. And then I really back off the complexity to where it's going to end up like more ground based if you're in the conference tournament or, postseason, because then at that time you've like accrued all the reps of your season of doing those sport specific movements. You don't need them from me anymore at that point. We need to just remember how to control our body.
Have you gone the route of adding the accessories essentially to the warm up, where it's like invert, essentially like, hey, typically we're doing our ground based power. And then if it's a lower body day or high CNS day, it's lower body first, then upper body. Have you ever inverted it where it's like, hey, we do the accessory movements first beforehand to save time? And if not, that was something that was like an aha moment for me with my group of athletes. Like, hey, if these are good to put at the end of the extra training session, like let's start with some hip flexion movements. Let's start with some, and it might be different than just foam rolling and mini banding. But again, you now have the constraints of your weight room. So I'm just talking in circles.
This I've done a while, and I think picked up in grad school from one of my mentors, but I really love, like, so let's say block 1, I am doing a clean variation, and block 2, I'm doing a squat variation. I am going to pair my clean with some type of hip activator or bracing movement, or even like maybe an upper back movement that needs to be instilled in that athlete before they go on to that next block. And then let's say I'm just going to do, a clean bench squat. Then I'm going to squat, and my next big primary movement is going to be a bench. I'm going to squat with the band pull apart or something to get my upper back fired, to where when I get under that bar, I'm already kind of warmed up. So that's kind of how I lay it out. Because I feel like I've already, like, in them doing that smaller accessory movement with their big primer movement, they're set up for the prime movement of the next block. And I don't have to do the little cues as much once they get under the bar.
And now you talk about getting under the bar. I mean, you're still squatting after having multiple back surgeries. How had that progress gone for you?
I don't know. I'm not the only one out there that's done it. Like,
I know you're not, but you're still doing it. Like, that's kudos to you.
I don't know. I didn't really give myself like there was never like is it going to work? It was just, it's like, I didn't have it was like, I'm going to figure out this timeline. There was no, like, I guess plan B. It's like, I'll figure out how to do it. And I did. I don't know. And it's worked out so far.
No, I mean, shout out to you for that. Was that the same process that you did for running the marathon? You're like, I'm just going to go run, or were you more calculated in how you progressed it? Because I know some coaches do want to start running more, whether they admit it or not. Like, how did you just were you just like, I'm running?
Well, really, for me, it was, I always need goals in something. And I had my son, and I'm pre and postnatal like exercise certified. And so like I knew the timeline that it would take to get my core strong. And I knew the numbers I was hitting as a high level power lifter before I got pregnant. And so I was like, okay, this is going to take a while. Um, I might want to have another baby. I don't have patience to like get really close and then have another baby. So what is like a feasible goal I can make for myself for some wins? And then that was just became running. And then another thing too, um, just learning how to become a mom and the balance of like, I mean, I told you how I kind of figured out the balance, but just like
Yeah.
getting to that point, there were a lot of thoughts and like a lot of guilt I had and a lot of like doubt in myself. Like, am I gonna be able to coach just as hard? How am I gonna do it all? That led to like me just needing running as a mental outlet.
Ooh.
And it gave me something that lifting doesn't, because I don't, like when I powerlifted, I usually would go to another gym for my big sessions and not do them at work. And that was how I found that success, if you will, to have a different environment. And so for me, getting outside and running gave me that different environment to where it just kind of happened.
Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about our newest sponsor, Hawkin Dynamics. Hawkin Dynamics builds and designs software and hardware for coaches, athletic trainers, sports scientists, and everybody in the high performance department. Most notably, their use of their force plates with the ease of transportation and ease of use. Not only did I use them when I was at Towson, but I've used them when I've moved back here to Iowa with Tucker at Goldfinch. So, check out Hawkin Dynamics in the link down below. Now let's get back to the show. What's up, strength coaches? Want to take a quick break from the show to talk to you about our sponsor, TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is your one-stop shop for online training platform needs as a coach. With TeamBuildr, you're going to be able to program for your athletes whether they're in person or remote. Using TeamBuildr, not only will you be able to program for your athletes, but there are special features such as the leaderboard and locking training with wellness questionnaires. With the leaderboard, you can have an exercise performed that day, whether it be a lift, a sprint, or a jump, and scores can be updated in real time and projected on a TV in the training. Wellness questionnaires can be used at the beginning of training, and your athletes will have to fill them out prior to being able to train. This ensures that as a coach, you're being able to collect quality data before the athletes train. So, if you're interested in TeamBuildr, click the link down below and find out more information. Let's get back to the show. No, that resonates with me because like getting outside and doing some, on-field training, I'd do that with my staff at Towson and at Iowa, whether we played basketball or whatnot. And then even just having that different training atmosphere, because now, like if you're in the rack squatting and if somebody comes up and like, you're going to, because you care, you're going to stop what you're doing and you're going to talk with them. And, but now if it's like, hey, I'm not here, it gives you that detachment point of view, not only for your work to, go and train, but you might actually have some fresher thoughts because again, you care. So it's not like you're going to stop thinking about you. You're going to be like, man, this is a great exercise. I should try doing this with, either the baseball team or, your brain is just always going.
My best programming is like on my long runs. I always say that because I can just kind of like get all my thoughts in order and then like go type it all out or write it on my notes in my phone when I'm done.
With the long run, I know that a lot of our coaches are probably thinking this. How do you handle speed work with groups of athletes that do have to do LSD stuff where it's long, steady state? And it's actually not as steady state as everybody thinks, because if you're making these mile times, like it's faster than a lot of coaches want to admit.
Well, as far as like the military requirements for West Point, it's not, they don't do it as frequently as you think. And I mean, like the time requirements, if you've developed your other energy systems, I think you should just be able to gut it out. I mean, maybe that's a little harsh, but that's kind of the, I make the joke, like their ACFT with some athletes, if you don't pass, just don't come back. I'm completely kidding. But like, we'll joke like that because I think at the end of the day, like if you have all your other energy systems developed from sports specific training, you should be able to gut out the mile times that are required for your age. It's not going to be fun. You might not feel really prepared, and mentally probably something you're not used to, but physiologically, I think you should be able to gut it out.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
And it's only a few times a year.
Okay, because I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of the
And we know when
misnomer
yeah.
about like Army would be that,
Mhm.
hey, they're going on all these early morning runs, and so any speed gains that you're trying to make with these athletes is essentially just going to be flying out the window.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. You know, you have a calendar, and those are just other things you have to factor in
You're
your
right.
calendar. Because there's just certain dates, and then their summer training is a little bit different. So it's kind of based on their class year. And you ask the right questions, you can get the schedule, and you know when those periods of maintenance for the speed and the strength are going to happen because they're going to have to do a lot more recovery work for their body to ruck and run those miles. But it's just another factor to throw in.
But you're right. That
Yeah.
again, anybody listening to that, all you got to do is same thing that you would do
Yeah.
with your
Any
schedule that
sport.
you
Yeah.
get for the games. It's like, hey, these are the dates that are set in stone,
Mm-hmm.
and this is how you reverse engineer it and just be able to concurrently handle it all.
Yeah.
What would be a piece of advice that you'd give to a young strength and conditioning coach right now?
Um, I think so. After every like session or group you have, I think it's really good to write down what you did well, what you could have done better. And then a lot of times these things no one else notices but you. So if like I used to get really down on myself thinking that like, oh, I didn't command the room like I wanted to. I didn't have the presence I wanted to, like my mentor does, you know. But then did the training get done? Did everyone stay safe and no one get hurt? Like just come back to that. Did anyone get hurt? Okay. We're halfway there. That sounds really, really simple, but I think if you just keep highlighting something good and something that you need to improve on, you will then the next week when you do that same lift, not make that same mistake, and then find something different that like, oh, that did go well. And then before you know it, you're just building on that, on those wins and learning points.
What would you say to somebody that's kind of established, been around for 3 to 6 years?
Um, 3 to 6 years, I would say you're still kind of in that range. In our field, especially, I feel like everyone's like, what's next? um, I think you need to just look around where you are and be like, what can I do here? And
Ooh,
just be present where you are because, you don't know how athletics are going to go. If you're, looking for that next spot, it might not be better. And it goes back to like, so the sport coaches you have, ask, do I like this sport coach? Because I'm their support staff. If I don't like their vision and the character, like I probably shouldn't be working for them. It doesn't matter what logo is on their chest. And then like that comes with some hard questions. And then another one, I think, especially on the Olympic side, we fail to ask, do I like this sport? Because you're going to be spending a lot of time with it. If you don't like that sport, either be thinking every department's set up a little different. Like, do I need to, pivot what sports I'm working? Maybe I don't with the sport coach relationship, or I don't like, I don't want to be on this field for 3 hours every day of my life, or whatever it may be, because you're going to have a better connection with the athletes if they know you actually enjoy watching them.
Amen. Amen. Anybody listening to that, that'll preach. What would you then say to anybody that's a head strength coach or a director or anybody that's been doing it 10 plus years?
Um, hmm. I guess like don't forget where everyone below you is because you had to take all those steps to get to that point. And remember, like, like financially what that might feel like, or the uncertainty, what that might feel like. And just kind of try to keep putting yourself in their shoes.
That's good.
Because there's no guarantee that they're going to get to where it all pays off where you are.
So then what would you tell your old self, like right now, going back to 10 years ago? What would you tell young Kenna?
Back to the question about, do I like this sport? And what can I do where I am to make my situation here better rather than trying to find the next place. So just be where you are.
That's something that young Justin would have liked to hear too. What is something about yourself that people don't know that you wish that people would know about you?
Oh man, I don't, we talked all the competing stuff, but we talked the mom thing. I don't know. Like, I'm pretty like laser focused with all that. I have 2 German shepherds.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
How hard is that having, we don't have a dog anymore.
Hmm.
Our dog had passed away. He was he was a small dog. But yeah, having big dogs, like that's got to be a blast to go and wrestle with the kids, right?
Yeah, they love like my son right now, but he, it's a still like young relationship, and we're still like very cautious. Like even though my dogs were my babies first, like they're
Yeah.
still animals, and
Yeah.
so I'm very hesitant on that. Um, but I, they're big dogs, but they're like their personalities are like little chihuahuas. Like I have one of them's 100 pounds and like all black, so he looks like a wolf, and he is just the goofiest, like skitty. He's skittish. He's just yeah.
That's awesome.
So that's my dog's personality, even though they look kind of intimidating.
What is your favorite movie you've ever watched?
Um, Trying to think. I'm not like a big movie person. I'm pretty like I like to read more, but movie wise, I don't remember the Titans was filmed at my high school. So we'll go
Really?
with that. Yeah.
That is
in
super
Georgia.
cool.
So
That's super cool.
yeah. Fun,
Uh,
and that could be my fun fact.
what is your favorite food?
Well, I did bodybuilding for 8 years, and so my taste buds like I don't think ever recovered. I like plain sweet potatoes. I like apples. I don't know. I'm very boring.
Okay, hold on. Power, like bodybuilding, like that's a whole. How did you get into that? And then what are some of the difficulties that I think most strength coaches wouldn't understand about bodybuilding?
Um, just that like so obviously we talked. I did powerlifting. I did marathon running. The thing with the bodybuilding is it never really like leaves you because you're always thinking about that next meal, that next cardio session. Your life is then segmented not into 24 hours when I train next. It's
Huh.
segmented into 3 hour blocks. If you, of course, if you're doing a weight cut at a high level for powerlifting, like you could have still be it in that same like time frame in your mind. But I think that's the hardest part. And there's a really big difference between like being in shape for the beach and in shape under lights on a stage and talking back to the concurrent part of your life, those 6 weeks leading up to that, you're not going to be a good human probably.
Wow.
So that's really kind of what led it. Oh, like I'm over this.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting because, hearing you talk about that, I would instantly think like, man, that probably leads you really well to help out athletes with the body weight requirements
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
there, or anybody that is, you talked about if it's MMA, but like being able to help
Mm-hmm.
with cutting weight because I mean, if you want to learn how to lose weight, look at the people that are able to do it over a
Right.
steady course of time. So that's got to
Mm-hmm.
lend you very well.
Yeah, and then I cut for powerlifting too, which is more on the performance side, and it's a way different process. But the mental aspect of the bodybuilding is, I don't know, it ran its course in my life. Put it
In
that way.
terms of the last question on this
Yeah,
topic, I mean, sorry, it's super fascinating for
it's
me.
long.
Like I've seen athletes
Hmm.
make some hard cuts, whether it be wrestling
Yeah.
or for boxing fights. What had been one of like the hardest cuts that you've had to do or that you've seen somebody do?
Um, I mean, I don't know. I feel like personally, I have like so many just days where I didn't think I'd pull it together in a sauna, or where I couldn't eat white fish anymore, like my like just
Yeah.
So outside of myself, like I definitely had one of like a West Point graduate that was a female thrower that was like down to the wire, and it was a lot of like the mental aspect of it, and um
Yeah,
so
one of my
yeah.
buddies who's a pro boxer, he's like, man, I tell you what,
Hmm.
there's two fights. When you sign up for a fight, he's like, there's the fight in the ring, and then there's the fight on the weight cut because that thing's no
Yeah.
joke. All right, last two questions for you. If you were an animal, what animal would you be?
um Probably an elephant.
An elephant.
Yeah, they're like a lot of power, but they don't take themselves too seriously.
And they're very smart, right? Like, I mean,
Oh yeah, I don't even think about that. So maybe I wouldn't be an elephant.
if you were a car, what car would you be and why?
I'm really like not a car person. Um,
I'm not either. No, like if I like when
yeah,
somebody asked me this question, it was my vehicle that I have right now. I have a Ford F-150. It's
yeah.
reliable. It gets the job done. Like that's my answer.
Hmm. Let's see. Probably some type of truck, powerful, and then you know can see over everybody else just from that viewpoint.
That's a good one. Coach, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we had not been able to discuss, that you were like, hey, this is kind of burning on my mind. This is something I really want to tell coaches and make sure that they understand about the field or athletics or coaching or whatnot?
Nothing really major just like comes to mind, but I guess I'll reiterate on that point that like, if you're passionate about this, like it can become your purpose and it can feel really, really right if you get in the right setting and you're able to then help others. And that's really what it's all about. It's not about your training. It's not about your PRs. It's about you taking your experiences and then helping others with it.
I mean, that's a mic drop moment right there. Coach, where can people follow you more if they've made it this far with us and they want to continue to learn about you and see the things that you do?
All right. I'm on Instagram. It's just Kenna, Kenna, then underscore Minichi, which is my married last name, Minnici. I have Facebook, don't really use it. And then LinkedIn, I'm on that. And I don't really do the whole Twitter thing. So
It's X now, isn't it? Right.
See, I'm behind.
Thank you very much, Coach. You have a good rest of the day, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you so much.
What's up, everybody? Just finished the recording with Coach Kenna Smoak, and that was a great conversation. I fully enjoyed being able to listen to her, and I think some of the things that really need to just stick back out with you all is her passion for working with people and her passion for wanting to be in the high performance team, right? She keeps talking about having relationships with your athletes, having relationships with your coaches, and I truly believe that that does go back into how she talked about it at her NSCA presentation, the work-life balance, and that analogy she used was unbelievable. Concurrent training. There's going to be periods where everything is involved in your life, but yes, there's going to be certain times where certain days where certain things are emphasized. So maybe you have a high-low model with your athletes, and you should have a high-low model with yourself, in your staff, in your personal life, in your family. So during the work week, if you have an in-season team and you know, like, hey, these are high practice days, or this is a high lift day, or a day that they have off, maybe on that off day, you're able to spend a little bit more time with your athletes, or excuse me, with your family. And you can know, like, okay, I don't have a big setup in the weight room. I don't have to, get all the racks set to this height and get all the everything set up. You can actually maybe take your kids to school or pick your kids up from school. Or if they're not in school yet, you can go home and see them. Like, being able to periodize your life, as she talked about, and having a great spouse is something that I completely agree with. And that's why this is something that I talked about when I was on Jay DeMayo's CVAS podcast, is you have to marry the right spouse, be in a really solid relationship with that person, so that way you can live that life that you want. Because if you have issues going on at the family, you're probably not going to be the best coach possible. So finding a great significant other, so that way you can live that life that you want as a coach. I mean, look at the life that she's been able to live, being a coach that's recovered from multiple back surgeries, that still back squats, runs marathons, has her kid on her back when she's, coaching with those different athletes. Like, that's something that somebody who is dialed in and cares about this profession. And to me, that's something that this profession needs. This profession needs more coaches that care, that are that dialed in, that want their athletes involved in their life. Because, like she said, there is something so powerful in all of her athletes seeing who she is and how she lives her life. And that's what you need to be understanding too. Your athletes are looking at you all the time. Just like when you have kids. This is something that I learned when I had kids. Your kids are always watching, they're emulating, they're seeing what you do. It might not seem like they're looking at you, but they are. They're watching, they're observing. And if you can set proper boundaries and you can set proper roadblocks in your life, so that way you can be present with your athletes when they're there, and with your family when they're there, and they can see you at games or practices with your family, because it's a great time. Like, for me, having my kids at the beginning of practice on a Friday before we travel, like, my athletes would come out and fist bump them, and having that relationship. Or when we were at banquets, and my athletes would go over and they would see my kids would go see an athlete that they knew, and high five them and whatnot. Like, that's what it's about, because we are here to change athletes' lives. Right now, it's January of 2024. Technology is running rampant in coaching. You don't coach technology. You don't coach dumbbells. You don't coach barbells. You work with humans. Make sure that you understand that. And I think that's something that Kenna talked about. You work with people. She was able to live a better life working with the volleyball team on that trip, where she took her son, and then her son was able to spend time with family when they were visiting, but she also then got to dive fully into work. Do you see that? That's where we talk about those 4 P's, right? If you can get 3 out of 4, and if that pay, you can get a steady paycheck, and then you can learn from us at Finance Fridays how to be better and be savvy with that constant income that's coming in from your job, but you have a great personal life, you have a great career progression, and you have a greater sense of purpose. It can make up for the fact that maybe you get, not paid what you want yet. How can you find ways to learn from us on Finance Friday or other financial avenues to enjoy your job? So yeah, that was a great conversation with Kenna. Make sure you go out and give her a follow. And anybody that is not inside the network, please DM us, reach out. We will help you get a trial membership. We have 24-hour access for $1. Get inside the network. If you have not signed up for fundamentals, also make sure you check out fundamentals. You can get CEUs for your NSCA strength and conditioning certification. So whether it is whatever one that the NSCA offers, you get 2.0 CEUs in category C. 2.0 for the price of $600 is much less than you would be paying for a hotel, food, airfare, the cost of the conference fee, and the cost of your membership price if you went to an NSCA conference. So it is a great, affordable option if money is an issue, or if you are not able to travel with your staff because you're either training athletes, or if you do have some personal time away and you need to not travel to a conference. This is a great option to save money, save travel, and be able to get CEUs to remain certified. Until the next conversation we have a great rest of the day. Talk to you soon.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.